Have you ever noticed how some people seem untouched by chaos? They're not loud, they don't rush to defend themselves, they don't react to everything. And sometimes you wonder, how do they do that? How do they stay calm when others are triggered? How do they walk away from arguments without needing the last word? How do they stop caring about opinions that used to keep them awake at night? Or maybe you're tired of feeling affected by everything. Someone's tone changes and your mood shifts. Someone misunderstands you and you replay it for hours. Someone doesn't choose you and suddenly your self-worth feels shaken. So the real question becomes: is it possible to become unbothered? Not numb. Not cold. But emotionally grounded. Today we're going to explore what psychologists, emotional intelligence research, and deep inner work reveals about becoming truly unbothered, and why it has nothing to do with pretending not to care. The myth of being unbothered. Most people misunderstand what unbothered means. They think being unbothered means ignoring emotions, suppressing reactions, acting detached, etc. But psychologist Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." This means that being unbothered is not emotional avoidance, it is emotional mastery. Emotionally mature people feel deeply but they are not controlled by what they feel. Now let's explain reaction versus response. A reaction is automatic and impulsive. It happens when emotions take control quickly, you act without pausing, etc. Your nervous system feels triggered. Examples: replying immediately when angry, raising your voice during conflict, sending a long emotional message without thinking, etc. Reactions come from past wounds, ego protection, fear or stress responses, fight, flight, freeze. It is often emotion first, awareness later. Meanwhile, a response is intentional and conscious. It happens when you pause before acting, you choose how to express yourself. Your actions align with your values. Examples: taking a breath before replying, saying, "I need time to think about this," setting a boundary calmly. Responses come from emotional regulation, self-awareness and present moment clarity. It is awareness first, action second. Reaction is equal to your past speaking. Response is equal to your present self-choosing. When you react, your brain's survival system takes over. When you respond, your thinking brain is engaged. Emotionally mature people don't feel less, they simply create a pause between feeling and action, and that pause is where power lives. Reaction asks, "How do I protect myself right now?" Response asks, "Who do I want to be in this moment?" Now, when was the last time you reacted instantly and regretted it later? At this moment, you should be asking, "Why does everything bother me?" You're not weak if everything affects you, you're human. Emotional triggers often come from unmet needs, fear of rejection, past conditioning, nervous system sensitivity, etc. Dr. Gabor Mate explains that triggers are often emotional echoes from unresolved experiences. Meaning that you are reacting not just to now, but to before. Example: someone ignores your message. Logically, it's small. Emotionally, it feels big. Why? Because your nervous system associates silence with abandonment. Unbothered people notice something others don't. They observe instead of absorb. Viktor Frankl said, "Between stimulus and response there is a space, in that space is our power to choose." One of the biggest shifts toward becoming unbothered is realizing most things are not about you. People speak from their wounds, their fears, and their insecurities. Don Miguel Ruiz said that, "Nothing others do is because of you." When someone criticizes you, are they truly describing who you are, or are they revealing who they are? Because more often than we realize, criticism is less about the person receiving it and more about the person expressing it. People don't see you purely as you are, they see you through the lens of their own experiences, insecurities, expectations, wounds, and beliefs. So when someone labels you, judges you, or projects assumptions onto you, they may not be defining your character, they may be exposing their internal world. Someone who calls you too much may be uncomfortable with emotional depth. Someone who says you're difficult may struggle with boundaries. Someone who criticizes your growth may feel threatened by change they haven't embraced themselves. This doesn't mean all feedback is invalid, but it does mean not every criticism is truth. Emotionally aware people learn to pause and ask, is this constructive feedback meant to help me grow? Or is this a projection shaped by someone else's fears, limitations, or unresolved emotions? When you understand this, something shifts inside you. You stop internalizing every opinion. You stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. And instead of reacting defensively, you observe with curiosity because criticism often tells you two stories at once. One about you, and one about them. And emotional maturity is learning how to tell the difference. Now, let's explain emotional detachment versus emotional numbness. Emotional detachment is conscious and intentional. It means you still feel emotions, you are aware of what's happening internally, but you choose not to become overwhelmed or controlled by those emotions. It's not shutting down, it's creating space. Emotionally detached people feel deeply but regulate themselves. Observe situations instead of reacting impulsively. Protect their peace without suppressing emotions. And can care without losing themselves. Example. Someone says something hurtful. Reaction, immediate anger or defensiveness. Detachment, I feel triggered right now, but I don't need to react immediately. Detachment says, I feel this, but I am not consumed by this. Emotional numbness is usually unconscious and protective. It happens when the nervous system becomes overwhelmed. Emotions feel too heavy or unsafe. The brain tries to protect you by reducing emotional intensity. People experiencing numbness may feel disconnected from themselves or others. Struggle to feel joy, sadness, or excitement. Avoid emotional conversations. Feel flat, empty, or indifferent. Numbness says, I don't want to feel anything. It is often linked to stress, burnout, unresolved pain, or emotional exhaustion. Detachment is regulation. Numbness is suppression or shutdown. Detachment is presence with boundaries. Numbness is absence from feeling. Emotionally mature people don't stop feeling, they stop abandoning themselves inside their feelings. Psychologist Esther Perel speaks about differentiation, staying connected while maintaining individuality. Staying connected while maintaining individuality means learning how to be close to others without losing yourself in the process. It is the balance between we and me. Healthy connection does not require self-abandonment, and individuality does not mean emotional distance or isolation. True emotional maturity lives in the middle. Connection means being emotionally available. Listening and understanding. Showing care, empathy, and presence. Building shared experiences and emotional safety. Connection says, I value us. But connection becomes unhealthy when it turns into overpleasing. Losing personal opinions. Avoiding honesty to maintain harmony. Making someone else your entire identity. That is no longer connection, that is enmeshment. Individuality means knowing your values, needs, and boundaries. Having personal interests and goals. Being able to think independently. Feeling secure enough to disagree respectfully. Individuality says, I value myself. It is not selfishness, it is self-respect. Many people struggle with this balance because of fear. Fear that independence will push people away. Fear that closeness requires sacrifice of identity. But healthy relationships actually need both because too much merging creates resentment and too much distance creates disconnection. Secure connection allows closeness without control. And intimacy without identity loss. When you lose individuality, connection becomes dependency. When you avoid connection to protect individuality, independence becomes isolation. Balance happens when you can say, "I choose you," without abandoning me. Practical steps to becoming unbothered. Step 1, ask, will this matter in a week? Step 2, stop over-explaining yourself. Step 3, set invisible boundaries. Step 4, accept being misunderstood, for freedom begins the moment you stop needing universal approval. There's a moment most people don't talk about when you start becoming truly unbothered. It's not when people stop testing you. It's not when life becomes peaceful. And it's definitely not when you stop feeling things. The real shift happens internally, at the identity level. Because before growth, most of us believe being unbothered means learning how to control everything around us. We think, if they would just understand me. If they would just change. If situations stop triggering me. And without realizing it, we give other people control over our emotional state. We become reactive, constantly adjusting ourselves based on external behavior. But then something changes. You stop asking, how do I control others? And you start asking, how do I regulate myself? And that question quietly rewires everything. Because suddenly, the goal is no longer to manage people, it's to manage your internal response. You begin to notice the pause between what happens and how you react. You realize you don't need to match energy to protect yourself. You don't need to explain endlessly to feel understood. You don't need to fight every emotional battle to maintain your worth. And that's when becoming unbothered stops being an act, and becomes your identity. Not because nothing affects you, but because your stability is no longer dependent on controlling the outside world. You trust your ability to hold yourself steady. And that changes how you move through everything. Lucy was in a work meeting and one of her colleagues kept interrupting her every time she spoke. Before, this would have completely thrown her off. Her heart would start racing. Her thoughts would spiral. Why are they doing this? Do they not respect me? Should I defend myself? Speak louder? Prove myself? So she would either over-explain or leave feeling frustrated, replaying the moment all day. But this time was different. She noticed the familiar emotional reaction rising, that tight feeling in her chest, the urge to immediately react, but instead of focusing on fixing the other person's behavior, she shifted inward. She paused and thought. I don't need to control them, I just need to stay grounded. So instead of matching their energy or trying to win the moment, she slowed down her response. When she spoke again, she simply said calmly, I'd like to finish my thought. No defensiveness. No emotional charge. And something surprising happened. Even though the other person didn't completely change, she didn't leave the meeting feeling drained. She didn't replay the moment over and over. She felt steady. She felt steady. That was the first time she realized being unbothered wasn't about people behaving perfectly. It was about no longer giving other people control over her internal state. The situation looked almost the same from the outside. But internally, she had shifted from trying to manage others, to managing herself. And that changed everything. Becoming unbothered is not about becoming distant. It is about becoming deeply rooted within yourself. Less reactive. More aware. Less controlled by noise. More aligned with peace. And maybe, being unbothered is simply learning that your energy is too valuable to give away unconsciously. If something in this video resonated with you, it probably means you're already becoming more aware of yourself, and awareness is where real change begins. If you want more conversations like this, deeper, slower, more intentional, subscribe and stay with me on this journey. And before you go, I'd love to know. What is one thing that bothers you less now than it used to? Write it in the comments. Sometimes seeing our growth helps us realize how far we've come.